I'm Sherry Sylvester, host of the Ninth in Congress podcast. I've been working at the nexus of politics and public policy my entire career. On Ninth in Congress, I'll be talking about my journey from the progressive left to the conservative right and my past 2 decades in the Texas Capitol with key policy and political players who have made our state a conservative model for the world. Subscribe now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Is climate change or climate alarmism what's really killing people? Are students graduating from high school graduating with what they need to succeed? And how do you be a mom and have a career and handle it all wonderfully? My name is Ariana Silva. This is Sweet Tea. And today I'm joined by a guest host, Ms. Britt Allen. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Britt Allen, and I'm the digital marketing manager with Right on Crime here at TPPF.
And today we're going to be getting into some talks about school, climate alarmism, and the story of Courtnie. Would you like to introduce yourself and what you do now?
I'm Courtnie Bagley, and I've been here for about 1.5 years. Before that, I taught public school for 20 years. I have 4 boys and 5 dogs, and and my husband, who's a trooper through it all. So
you're not busy at all, are you?
No, not at all.
So 4 boys, 5 dogs.
Yeah,
you didn't have like a dog to kid ratio.
The dogs are a recent addition. It's a long story, but
all 5 of them.
3 of them are new.
Okay.
So the cuteness is wearing off quickly.
Do the boys help at all?
No, they're all out of the house.
Oh, really? I didn't know they did the last one. Okay.
Yep. They're all out of the house. I try to get them to come back and help on the weekends, but they're not too keen on that.
Sure.
So what do you do here at the foundation?
So I'm the education coordinator for Life Powered, and back in 2019, there were some changes to the science TEKS, and just to be more inclusive of the role of energy in our life and in our science. And so to that end, I'm here just trying to educate teachers about these new changes and provide lessons and resources. You know, we did a summer institute in Midland where we took teachers out there and told them the story from start to finish about where their energy comes from. So, you know, just different things to help engage teachers. And, you know, especially with elementary school teachers, whenever they go to college, they just get this general overview of the sciences. And so when they get to the classroom, they don't really have maybe the in-depth understanding that they need for all of their subject areas. And so this is just one way to help support them, especially, you know, on the elementary level.
So it supplements the other areas that they want to fill in some of those gaps.
Right.
Gotcha.
And then for someone who maybe wouldn't know what TEKS is, I know we throw that word around a lot here at the foundation. What is it?
So it stands for Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, and it's the set of education standards that really mandate what teachers teach in the classroom. And so they were updated generally every 10 years. There have been some changes over this past session, and we're waiting for the new rules to come out about that. But right now it's every 10 years they update and change the TEKS based on what teachers have to say, what public has to say, and also what the test scores tell us as far as how kids have been doing over the previous 10 years.
Amazing. And so you work with Life Powered. Could you just give us an overview if somebody maybe doesn't know or hasn't seen the amazing Instagram account? What is Life Powered? What is it that y'all do?
So the role of Life Powered is to raise America's energy IQ, and we do that in a variety of ways. We have people who do research. We have people who do public testimony, and then people who really go all over the country discussing energy issues.
Awesome.
Fantastic. But you came from an education background. So I know a lot of the guys here came in policy wonks, but why did you choose to go into education?
Well, I went into education. It was kind of originally sort of a fluke. I just applied to graduate school. I wanted a graduate degree, and it was really just what am I interested in. It wasn't like this moment where I was like, you know, my heart's burning to be a teacher.
What were you studying before then?
International relations and German.
Okay. Oh, wow.
That was my undergraduate, and I had worked at the Red Cross, and I had done stuff with their international humanitarian law program and health and safety. I taught swim lessons for a couple of summers.
Awesome.
And but I just wanted to go back to graduate school. And so when I was looking through the course catalog and trying to figure out, I don't know, just something popped up, and I said, okay, secondary education. And it turned out to be the right choice. I just didn't know it at the time.
I love that.
What grades were you teaching?
I taught 9th through 12th grades for 20 years, and I've taught in every public school environment, urban, rural, Title I schools, big schools, small schools, online schools, public schools, private schools. I mean, I've really had a really broad experience with the opportunities that have been afforded to me.
Focusing on during that time?
I did social studies, mostly AP courses, AP World History, U.S. History, Government, Economics, did some anthropology, did some co-teaching with English teachers. Like I say, I've done many things. I taught German for a couple of years in South Carolina, so...
You said AP history, and I think I got a flashback of PTSD from high school a little bit. I did not do well.
For me, it was AP Eco. That was like, yikes.
Yeah, that macroeconomics is the killer.
That was, that was
That's make it
tough.
or break it.
My gosh. That's amazing. And then German. So why German?
I had studied German for 8 years. I had a fabulous German teacher in high school. I kept in touch with her for many, many years after I graduated. And I went to Germany and studied in Germany. And
amazing.
It was just really, I just went to my school principal and I was like, I have this certification. Like, what do you think? And I mean, it was just, my attitude has always been like, what's the next best thing? Like, I never was satisfied in my current in my position. I was always like, what's the next challenge? And so I just said, could we do this? And so we did.
So what was the next challenge that made you switch one day and realize that there was something that you needed to do outside of education?
Well, I taught during COVID, and I realized at that time very acutely the role that policy played in my day-to-day life. And I was really interested in learning what goes on behind the scenes. And so my youngest son was graduating from high school, and I often, because I taught high school, I stayed in touch with a lot of my students, and I often looked, for jobs and stuff for them. And so it just so happened I saw this job posted, and I was like, maybe I'll keep this one for myself. And so I looked at it, and I thought it was a really nice mix because my family, my life has always been supported by energy. My dad was a nuclear engineer. My husband works in the oil field. And so I understand the value of energy and the role that it plays in my life. And so it just seemed like a good opportunity to sort of broaden my horizons and share from my personal experiences. These stories that I always heard growing up, my dad, during Chernobyl, for example, he was able to tell us like really what was going on, really what had happened in a way that was understandable and manageable, so that we weren't like freaking out.
Access to that. That's insane. And I feel like that's why people are still scared now, right, to go into that kind of energy.
With nuclear, there's a lot of misunderstanding. The energy that's used in nuclear power plants is not the same thing as like a bomb. And the way that we build the nuclear facilities in the United States, it's really top notch, top of the line, just like everything America does with energy. There's so much safety. And so many protocols and technologies that we have that we really don't need to be worried about these things.
And but the other thing that I think is really interesting about your story is you've talked about your one of your sons realizing that the public school system doesn't always provide the right kinds of courses for kids. And would you be able to share some of that with us?
Yeah, I have 4 boys, and they all went to public schools. And, one of the reasons I chose the last school that I was at is that I wanted to be in a school with them. I wanted to teach them. I just wanted to have that old fashioned experience. And so I went and found a job at a school where we could all be together. And in that, I realized that not all of my children are fabulous students. And so, in fact, it's sort of like a joke in the family, but I was the one who put all of them in ISS at some point or another during their high school careers. But seeing them in the classroom, it was such a unique perspective to see how they learned and what they learned and I knew when they applied to college like what they should do.
Right.
Although it was their choice, I think I had a unique perspective to give them some guidance.
Right.
And so yeah, one of my kids, actually two of my boys, college was not the right fit for them. One of them went ahead and went to A&M and, you know, decided that he would rather do something else about halfway through. And when my youngest son went, we had a very frank conversation, and I was like, you hate sitting in class. Like, I can see how it pains you. Like, here are some other options. And so we went through the options, and he ended up studying diesel mechanics at TSTC. Wow. He's going to finish early. He took summer classes. He just rebuilt the engine of his car this summer.
That's so
I
cool.
mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And he's already getting the job offers. He's already talking about the future. And what's really exciting to me is that there are advanced options at TSTC that I was unaware of. And so he's getting extra certifications so that he'll be able to leave and have just the broadest variety of
And he's excited in his classes then, right?
And he's really excited. And, you know, the other thing I'll say about this technical school experience is that when you have kids that graduate from a four-year college, like, I know they do resume writing and like all this job prep and stuff, but it's really nothing compared to what he's getting at TSTC. I mean, it is really just hands-on, people coming and talking to them, and there's a lot of accountability with the process. And so I'm super excited for his future. And I can't say enough about the technical schools. And I look at students, you know, any teacher who's honest, especially in high school, and we see these kids, we know that some of them, you know, they all want to go to college, but like, you know.
And maybe they want to go to college because that's what's been presented as the best option.
Right.
For
And they
everyone.
don't know what the other options are. And now I just look back and I just think there were so many kids that I wish I had this experience when I taught them. Do you know what I'm saying?
Because you could have directed them.
Because I could have, because I could have directed them.
Well, I'm also just thinking about, like, I don't know if it was like this for you, Ariana, when you were growing up and in school, but when I was growing up, college was like a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Like it was
the default.
Right. It was the only path. And it was like, the narrative was, if you don't go to college, like, you will never have a good life. You'll never be independent. You'll never have skills. You'll never this, that, the other. And I certainly don't regret my college experience. I loved my university. But sometimes I look back at what I do now as my job, and I'm like, did we need to pay that much money for this? And I sit back and wonder, like, how might things have been different if maybe there were other opportunities presented to me? Or my little sister's extremely smart, but college wasn't her thing either. And, you know, we tried to force her in that direction and she didn't thrive, but now she has this amazing job and she is thriving. And so it's just refreshing to hear somebody, you know, sit down with their child and be like, this doesn't have to be your only path. In fact, I think you'd thrive here. And for him to go off and do that is just such a testament to A, what a great mom you are, but B, like, how awesome it is that you're so in touch with different options for different capabilities.
And, you know, so many of like the four-year degrees, it's like, so you major in what? Psychology, and you get a bachelor's degree. So
And then you can't use
what
it.
are you going to do with it
Right.
unless you get the professional degree?
Sure.
And, you know, a lot of those jobs now, even engineering jobs, can be outsourced. But your hairdresser, she will never be outsourced.
No.
You will go to her all the time.
Yeah.
And so I just cannot say enough about the value of these jobs and how
Right.
integral they are. And I don't know what happened where we decided that these jobs were, you know, second rate or not as valuable.
Well, you actually wrote about that in your article, right? Do you have some of the pieces from that?
Actually, yeah, this is a perfect opportunity to transition this conversation into the policy pulse. So, Courtnie, you did write an article called "It's Time to Talk About and Teach Science." And the crux of it was how the SBOE, you know, changed its regulations so that we could talk about science in the classroom in a much less politicized way. But also, you know, the fact of the matter is that our teachers are sometimes misleading climate science being taught in the classroom. So could you break that down and kind of talk about that issue and, you know, where it's headed?
Well, that one has been the one that I have tried to untangle in my mind since I took this job. But, you know, the reality is there are second opinions for everything. If you
Right.
get a diagnosis, you could go get a second opinion from another doctor. And we are constantly, one of the things in social studies that you teach is like there are constantly innovations and changes and discoveries. And so to say that science is finite or defined is really a difficult thing for me to grasp. They just discovered like a new organ like in 2019, like the interstitial, right? And like, do we even know if Pluto is a planet?
I'm exhausted.
Well, go look it up. I could be saying it wrong, but it was like 2019. We've had these bodies. People since Da Vinci have been taking them apart and like examining them, right? Like he made all those
something new.
diagrams, and there's like a new organ. And like we can't agree on if Pluto is a planet or not, right? I mean, there are all of these scientific questions that we still have. And so I look at this subject the same way, right? Like things are constantly changing and evolving, and there are a multitude of different opinions depending on if you're talking to a physicist or a geologist. And so to narrow this down into one or two sentences that will be part of an education standard is very difficult.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
So what you would be looking for, or what we would hope for, is something that would say this like group is thinking in this way, like presenting that it is fact that way, or what sort of what would that
I think
look like
one
in
of the
textbook?
things is, to consider the scientific method, right? And like you have to do experiments and collect data and draw conclusions. But the thing about the scientific method is like once you draw your conclusions, there's always an opportunity for retesting and like updating your findings based on new questions that you have. And so I think that's the value of the way that standards have been written in the TEKS, is that we can sort of evolve our thinking in the questions that we're asking in our science classes. But there are some really interesting new standards that have been introduced. One of them is the discussion of energy poverty and the role of energy, affordable, reliable energy, and alleviating energy poverty. My favorite one, though, is the cost-benefit analysis. Kids who take science from grades 6 through 12 are now going to have to do what engineers and scientists do in real life and figure out what are the costs of something and what are the benefits of something. For example, considering where the lithium is sourced to make the batteries. That would be a definite talking point for a cost-benefit analysis lesson, because we're getting these things from, the Congo and from third world countries, and oftentimes it's slave labor. And so when we're driving our cars, do we take that cost into account? So it's not just financial costs, but there are also ethical costs, environmental costs, all kinds of opportunities that students have to really expand their learning and their knowledge of these concepts that they're learning in the abstract, to apply them to real life.
Yeah, that ethical cost is something that I feel like is so interesting to tap into, because I feel like you guys at Life Power do a really, really great job about the sheer honest truth about how that affects other people in different countries. Where here in the United States, we're so focused on ourselves and thinking about how clean energy makes our lives better, but we don't even stop to think about, how that affects people in other countries. So what would you say is maybe the biggest misconception about, that area of, energy poverty and clean energy and, whatever else we're talking about here?
Well, for me, I think the biggest takeaway is like what you're talking about with, it's not self-centered because it's like the life that we live, right? So it's just what we know. But to realize and understand the people around the world who don't have access to the energy that we have access to, and how their lives are fundamentally different because of that, and how so many problems as far as like health and safety and life expectancy, access to education, all of these things could be alleviated by lifting these people out of poverty. And energy is one of the first steps to making that change.
That's good.
So,
And it's not just impacting like people in those other countries. The jobs that are available in that type of energy is impacting people in the U.S. as well. I think you have the statistics on some of
Yeah,
that.
it says so in your article. It looks like 91% of students don't have access to programs in oil and gas, when oil and gas jobs actually provide an average salary of about a little over $115,000 a year. So can you maybe speak to, that job gap here of like the wasted resource of students who could be thriving in these jobs but don't even know about it because of what we're being taught in high school?
Well, those statistics are really similar for most blue collar jobs. If you want to look at like electricians and carpenters and these things that we need to, for example, keep the housing industry going.
Right.
I mean, one of the costs one of the problems involved in the rising cost of housing is there is just a shortage of plumbers. There is a shortage of carpenters. And so they can charge premium rates for their services, right? So we really need to focus in a more broad sense on these blue collar jobs and raising up these future job owners or these future business owners, because that's where you see real entrepreneurship in this field. Okay. But speaking specifically to that, when you talk to universities who have petroleum engineering programs, one of the issues that they find is that students believe that this is a dead-end field because, oil and gas is going away.
Yeah.
And
I didn't even think about that aspect of it.
Yeah. And also, there's I guess there's a perception about these jobs for many students, but the reality is there are 1 billion people on the planet who don't have access to energy. And so the next step is, for them to have broader access to these petroleum-based products.
Right.
And so it's not going away. It's only going to grow. When you look at the projections, it may not be growing in the United States because we're kind of at a plateau.
Yeah.
But we're talking about, the African countries and a lot of countries in Asia who are just coming into their own. And so we're actually seeing an increase in petroleum use across the world.
Because of material stuff, right? Because it's not just used for energy.
Right. Well, it's not just used for energy. I mean, there are 6,000 products that, we're probably wearing many of them, right?
Yeah,
my joke when I talk to kids is like, if you did not have petroleum in your life, you would be naked and afraid and without a cell phone. So, and it's true, anything that you have that is a plastic product comes from oil. Most of your cosmetic products has petroleum in it. So, it's not going anywhere.
I'm not ready to give that up if it's in my makeup, let me tell you. So why would you say that there is this preconceived notion as, kids are going off to college and maybe don't want to get into oil and gas because they think it's either a dead end or they think it's not ethical? Why is that? Like, what's the pinpointed reason why kids think that?
I think a lot of it probably goes back to media, their job, I don't care what media source you listen to, even on your Instagram, it's always about the clicks, right?
Yeah.
And so it's easy to tell the hard, scary story because that's, for whatever reason, we are just wired to click on the stuff that produces the most anxiety in our lives.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of it is that it's driven by what the kids are seeing on social media.
Yeah.
But speaking about some of that, the climate alarmism on social media, Life Powered also had an article a few months ago called "The New Trend Plaguing Young People, Eco-Anxiety." And it goes over how kids young adults between 16 and 25 are now more scared than ever about climate change and really fearing it's going to alter their the lives and destroy the world, so much so that there's now people who've been actually killing themselves out of fear.
Right.
So like on Earth Day this year, there was a guy who set himself on fire. And in there was a New York Times article in 2020 about this woman who was so scared that she ended up taking her own life. And she wrote to them saying that she didn't want to be reciting poetry as the world was burning. And there's also all those protests happening. So what do you make of all of that anxiety? Is that something that existed before now? Or
I remember when I was in like 3rd or 4th grade, this science lesson we had on acid rain, and like we all thought that we were gonna like melt or something, like it was going to
my
burn us
gosh.
alive. I mean, it was really scary.
Sure.
Do you remember they'd have pictures of like statues that have like had like
The
deteriorated?
erosion,
Yes, I
yeah.
remember seeing those in my
Yes,
classes.
yes.
in
Did y'all
elementary.
go to?
It was scary. And I
was wondering
remember
what
being
happened to
scared.
that.
Yeah, well, you know what happened? Innovation, right? And now because of the innovation that, one of the great things about the United States is that we have always been the leaders in developing new technologies and new industries to, fight the problems. What is it that, what is the motherhood of necessity is the motherhood of invention,
Yeah.
right? And so, I think what happened is that people saw a problem and they solved it using cost-benefit analysis and technologies and all of those things. And so I really believe that we have a lot of power to control our own destinies by putting these discoveries and these innovations to good use. And like we're talking about acid rain, and back in the 70s, you would see these commercials on TV about how polluted the air was. Like you could see the smog in the air.
Yeah.
And there was this commercial with this like Indian, and he's like going through the river, and it's like all dirty, and he's like crying a
my
tear at the
gosh.
end, talking about how we're like all gonna die from
goodness.
pollution and dirt and stuff.
Wow.
But we saw a problem and we created a solution. And now today, our air is 80. There's like an 80% reduction in pollution in the quality of our air. So, and I'm just saying, like, awareness of like the reality of the situation, and also considering like, these climate protesters, like when I'm seeing them like at the Burning Man thing, and they're like on that, they're like sitting on the road, and they've got
Yeah,
like
to
these
give some
orange
context,
jackets on.
It was like in Nevada, right, is where Burning Man's happening.
Right.
And so there was, I think his videos like gone around a lot of social media where they're like in a line protesting, and the cop just like comes through, rams through it, which is the first time I've seen police actually take
Right,
action right away. So that's what was happening a few weeks ago. What were you going to say?
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say is like what I noticed is they're wearing like those little safety vests, and I'm like, y'all know those are petroleum products you're wearing, right?
No, they don't know.
No,
Like,
right.
the
That's what I'm
thing.
saying. So
Yeah.
it's like having this awareness and of really the role that it plays in our lives, I think is really important. And also, to that end, understanding that if you want the world to be cleaner, like look at the places today in the world that are dirty. Okay, in South America, in Africa, in parts of Asia. What else do those places not have? They don't have access to affordable, reliable energy. And if you want to clean up the world, the best thing you can do is lift these people out of poverty. And so, I guess because I have a social studies background, I can see those things maybe a little bit differently than what a science teacher might approach it. So I think that, having conversations and discussions and just building awareness and understanding that everybody wants things, everybody wants the world to be a good place. And it's like, we're not working against each other. We really are we should be working towards the same goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when I feel like there's this view of maybe conservatives of like, we don't care about the environment or earth or, energy, when it's like, actually, we care a great deal. And in fact, especially you guys at Life Power just have so much research and so much knowledge about what actually creates clean energy and can lift people out of energy poverty. So back to what you were saying of like, no, we really do care about the same common goal. We just have very different means of getting there, it seems like.
And we do care about the people that it's impacting.
Right.
much.
And a lot of the, I don't really focus on policy, but really when you look at the policies, who do they hurt the most? They hurt the people who are the most disenfranchised, right? When you're talking about like energy subsidies and things like that, when our energy bills go up, it may not affect us as much as it would someone, who is more, impoverished. And so I think we do care. And, I don't like, one of the things, coming from the classroom that it feels like teachers are always like in a tug of war between, political agendas.
Yeah.
And we're just like, all we want to do is teach.
Yeah.
All we want is for kids to learn and to grow up and have happy, productive lives. I mean, really, at the end of the day, that's really what teachers want. But oftentimes we are, caught in the middle of these opposing points of view.
Especially in a balanced point of view. I feel like that's something that I just feel resonates from you, is like, it's just balanced, and it's an opportunity to just think critically and ask questions, and that's the whole point of science.
Right. And like we were talking about AP classes. So like in the AP classes, there's the DBQ, right? The document-based question.
Oh, no.
Do you remember this? Okay. And so you have this one question and you have these 7 documents that you have to analyze, and they're all from different points of view. Right. And so it's like I would always tell my students, it would be like we all see a fight happen in the cafeteria, but I might see it on the closed circuit TV. You might have seen it in person.
Yeah.
Somebody else might have heard about it down the hall. Like we all have a different perspective of it. So how do we get to a consensus? Or how do we draw a conclusion from all of these different perspectives? And so, it's not teaching kids what to think. It's teaching them how to think. And I think
giving them the options of those points of view so they can come to that.
Giving them the balanced perspective. And we even have one of the things we're working on right now, we work on these lesson plans, and one of them we're working on right now is a town hall. And what it is you give the kids a scenario, an environmental scenario about a power plant that's coming to their community, and they have to look at these little cards about the different people who would be involved in that decision-making process to see what would be the best approach to take at the end of the day. So again, these real life opportunities or real life scenarios to really sort of hash it out and figure out what it is that, you think about these things.
That's so smart.
So.
I love that. Because especially I got out of school and I was like, I don't know who makes decisions about what. I don't care. Like, that's what an awesome and interactive way to teach people. And so when kids get out of school.
And then remember that whenever communities are making decisions, it impacts more than just one person. It impacts all of these different things.
Exactly. And everybody has a different experience, a different role. And so it's going to impact different people differently.
Yeah. That's incredible. Well, moving away and into our advice segment, Courtnie, you're really amazing in the sense that you've just had an incredible professional background, but you're also a wife and a mom, and you've really had it all. So for our younger viewers who, want to have a family one day, but also want to continue and have a robust career, what's your best advice for how to move forward in both of those things and manage it well?
Well, I will say one of the blessings of my career, which I didn't really realize until the boys were almost gone, is that I did have the opportunity, because of the job that I had, to really be with them after school and in the summers. And I think
your schedule was
because my schedule was their schedule.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the hardest things for moms is they feel like they have to choose. And I really I've thought a lot about this, because although I don't admit to being over 25, I realize that I am entering a new phase of life. And so a lot of my son's friends who are getting married and having families, I'm seeing them have these discussions about when, am I going to work after I have a baby, and these kinds of things. And so I think my advice is, and you can take this with for what it's worth. But I took 2 years off when the boys were really little. And I don't regret that at all. I don't regret spending those 2 years with them, eating lunch at the picnic table every day and, having those memories. But I think it's important for moms to remember that you can have it all, but maybe not all at the same time. And
it's okay to have different life or different times in your life or seasons, I guess.
Right. I mean, for me, I didn't take on a job that would require me to be away from home more until after they were gone. I think being a mom is the best thing that you can do if you want to challenge yourself. I mean, really challenge yourself. It's really the best thing you can do. And I think that, we need to put value in the fact that we really are raising humans and that we want to raise good humans.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you can have it all, maybe not all at the same time. And man, I just think we put too much pressure on ourselves. No matter what choice we make, if we decide to stay home, we're always worried about, did I make the right decision? If we're working, did we make the right decision? And I think once you make the decision, just be at peace with it. I think you just have to be at peace with the role that you've chosen and the decision that you've made for whatever that season is.
It's also impressive how throughout your career you kept moving into these different roles and spaces and not being afraid to take on that next challenge, as you were putting it. So what gives you that motivation to push yourself out there and try something new?
I don't know. I just always have felt like throw it against the wall and see what sticks. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But you don't know if you don't try. I probably got that from teaching the swimming lessons, because there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of risk involved when you ask those kids to, trust you, and they've just met you, 10 minutes ago to,
You're
that
like,
you'll
here, go into
Jump in the deep end.
I promise I'll catch you. So, yeah, but I don't know.
But it's paid off at the end, right?
Yeah, and I think, life was so much simpler. I think we need to stop reading self-help books and just go with the flow of life and just, enjoy it and not stress about it so much.
I feel like especially as women, we get so in our own heads about the right move and the right choice, and we get so caught up in cost analysis, I guess, of this decision versus this decision.
Right.
And to hear you say, sometimes you just got to let it go and let it flow and things work out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
And clearly your professional background is such a testament to that. So it's just so refreshing. And then on the tangible side of, parents and this conversation that we just had, which is so robust, what can parents do about districts that are maybe lacking in CTE classes for oil and gas or mechanics or all those things that would maybe be a better fit for their kids?
Well, I think the first thing parents need to do is really educate themselves on what the opportunities are, and also what the districts that they are in offers the kids, right? Because there are, programs where you can go to a community college for the day in some larger districts. And if your district doesn't have those opportunities, find ways for your kids to be involved through, 4-H programs or whatnot. There are all kinds of groups where you have, from my son would have loved to join a classic cars group or something where he could tinker with, people, experienced people on cars and whatnot. We've given, I think I remember when I was teaching a long time ago, I had this really troubled student. And I didn't know him, right? He was in my class for 45 minutes a day, but he was giving me trouble. And his mom came in and we had this big meeting and she was like, well, I don't know what to do with him. He's your problem.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just met him.
That's really sad.
I don't know, he's not my problem. I'm glad to help him in the ways that I can, but
you're his parent.
that's not, that wasn't my role. That's not my role. And I think we have given, as parents, a lot of our responsibility over to schools. There's this program, it's called Adulting Day, where they take these seniors and they teach them how to change a tire and change the oil in their car and balance a checkbook.
I would have liked that.
Okay.
I feel like I would have needed that.
And how to cook. But I'm looking at this and I'm like, but why is the school doing this and not the parent?
That's so good.
That's true.
So I feel like if parents were just to take, and it goes back to the job thing and the career thing that you're talking about, is parents have so many responsibilities, especially financially, to care for their families. It's really hard, but we've got to make the sacrifice and be engaged and involved in our kids' education. That's just the bottom line. And guidance counselors, I'm going to tell you, they do the best they can, but they're overwhelmed. Okay. And at the end of the day, you're going to have to seek out the opportunities for your kids by calling the community colleges, by calling your district, by finding out really what is it that your kids are good at and what are they interested in.
Because you'll have a better idea of that than their teachers will.
Right.
Yeah.
And not just assuming that college is the way to go, but like really find out what are they interested in. You know, one of the things I said to my son just recently is he's one of my older boys is talking about graduate school, but he doesn't, like me, he doesn't know what he wants to study. And I said, well, you know what I did? I just went and read the course catalog.
There you go.
And I said, what interests me? What do I like? And so I think just helping them figure out what it is that they're good at, what it is that they like by finding them opportunities is really a valuable thing that you can do for your kids. And it's also, these conversations have been some of the most meaningful conversations I've had with my boys, really.
Yeah.
Because I'm really asking them, like, who are you?
Yeah.
And I'm like really just trying to get to know them as adults, and like they're seeing me in a different way. And so, you know, and also, you know, the conversations they're having with my husband about like guy things and husband man responsibility things.
Oh,
I
wow.
mean,
So it
it's
calls
really
them to responsibility in other areas too.
yeah. I mean, it's really been a great transition period for our family.
Yeah. I think what's really cool about what you're talking about is I think and I'm not a parent yet, but you know, this idea of, I think it's really easy to be like, yeah, we're raising kids, and you know, you get caught up in, you know, getting them ready for bedtime and taking them to their sports stuff, and all of that is great and worthwhile and honorable. But I think what's really interesting about what you say is that it looks like to me that you raised adults. You know, you really, really got to know your kids and invested in them, and not just what their life looks like now, but what it could be in the
I feel like that's
future.
going to stick with me. The idea of like, I'm raising my kids to become adults.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you are, you know, if you want them out of the house, I'm sure it's like, well, you don't want them to be kids, but you helped them get raised into men and figure
Right.
out their path. And I think that's just a really interesting way of parenting, and really being your kid's advocate truly for their future.
Yeah.
So I love that you said
Well,
that.
and they don't know, and they do need guidance.
Right.
You know, but we said early on, we have an exit only policy in our house. Like, there is no coming back. Okay. And like during COVID, I've got to say, like, my two older boys, they stayed.
Sure.
They, you know, even when classes were shut down and stuff, they stayed and worked. They did not come home. And so I was really impressed with them for making that choice to do that.
Yeah.
And not, you know, just kind of lay on the couch like, you know, a lot of other kids were doing. So it really was, I mean, it's for them, but it's for me too. It's like a survival thing. Like, because I raised them once, I'm not doing it again.
If you ever write a parenting book, will you just give us early access and let us know? Because I
Yeah,
feel like
I'll
I've
take
learned
one.
so much that I want to take out into the future.
Well, it's not perfect and it sure is messy, but you know.
And so if parents are wanting to get more involved with their students and like some of the educational aspects of like you were talking about with energy, what's a resource that they could use to learn more and teach
I have
them?
a Substack. It's called classroompowered.org, and you can just, you know, I guess Google it, classroompowered.org, and you can look and see. I have just different kinds of resources. Like right now we're promoting Energy Awareness Month, and we have these 5 lessons. One is on conservation, and one is just what is energy. We have a great cost benefit analysis opportunity for high school kids. So, you know, that's one thing that we're promoting right now, but I have like lesson plans, suggested book lists and podcasts.
That's fantastic.
And posters. I send teachers posters of
that's
all the
cool.
different hydrocarbon products that are in their daily lives. And so, did I say lesson plans? We're doing
Yeah,
lesson
that's
plans. So
fantastic.
yeah, we've got.
And then for young adults like myself who feel like their environmental science class may have left out a few things, what's a resource for where adults can learn more about energy policy and what they're doing?
Well, I mean, Life Powered has its own website. I'm kind of separate from them because I'm like all about the TEKS and, you know, what TEA tells me I got to, you know, put out there as far as resources and lessons. But if you're interested in policy and research, that would be on the Life Powered website. So
Fantastic.
lifepowered.org.
And is there anywhere else that we can find you or follow what you're doing? Classroom Powered is fine if that's the
Yeah, that's
Substack
really
is
it.
good.
so go to
That's all we got
Classroom Powered.
right now. Yeah, we'll see what happens in the future. So
Fantastic. And Britt, where can people find you to learn more about what you're up to?
Well, follow us at Right on Crime. We're on all of the different social media platforms. I know Life Powered is too, and Right on Crime also has their own website at rightoncrime.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us,
thank you,
Courtnie.
Courtney. Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for the tea.
You're welcome. And anyone who's watching can always tune in every single Friday to the Sweet Tea series. We'll see you next time.